So, welcome to LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. This is the live show I do at 6:30 p.m. Pacific every Sunday evening, where I take the clips from the Sunday morning news political analysis shows here in the United States that I think are interesting or important, and then I give my live commentary on it, and then I, at the end, after I go through all the clips, I look at my comments from the viewers in the discussion section. I see I already have some viewers watching, so I'm glad to see that. The whole program tonight is going to be on Syria. That's, of course, the big topic. Anyone who's paying attention. It was one of the topics of my LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup last week. And last week it looked like military force was imminent and that President Obama was going to go do it on his own, but that's not how it turned out. It turned out just yesterday, President Obama came out, and that's the first clip I want to show, is how he didn't say that he needed to get the authorization of Congress, but he said he was going to get the authorization of Congress, or asked for the authorization of Congress, and I'll show you first that clip here.
Yet while I believe I have the authority to carry out this military action without specific congressional authorization, I know that the country will be stronger if we take this course, and our actions will be even more effective. We should have this debate because the issues are too big for business as usual.
So yeah, that was kind of a big debate I've been getting into with several different people during the week as to whether President Obama had the authority to do these limited airstrikes on Syria without getting congressional authorization. And there's, of course, the possibility that it will go through Congress and he won't get authorization, although I think that's pretty unlikely. And at the end of his press conference, there was a shouted question that President Obama didn't answer about that I wanted to show here.
I'm ready to act in the face of this outrage. Today I'm asking Congress to send a message to the world that we are ready to move forward together as one nation. Thanks very much.
Will you forgo a strike if Congress disapproves?
So you can see that President Obama did not answer that question there as to whether, if Congress doesn't approve, if he would still go ahead and strike. And I actually have put a link down in the video description, if you press show more down below me, that I put a bunch of links that I'm going to discuss during the course of the show, one of which is to this federal court case from 2000, I think it is, about when President Bill Clinton did these airstrikes on Kosovo. He, at the time he was doing the strikes, Congress voted, I think it was a tie in the House, 213 to 213, so the resolution to support use of force in Kosovo failed, and Clinton went ahead and did it anyway, and some members of Congress sued, and the Supreme Court, or not the Supreme Court, the Federal District Court of Appeals, which is as high as the case got, they dismissed the case because they said it was a political question, at least at that level, where a resolution in support of action had failed, that there might be some sort of illegality if Congress had gone as far as they could go, like trying to cut off funds or passing a resolution that prohibited military force or impeachment. But absent Congress making some affirmative step like that, that it was a political question that the courts couldn't get involved in. That was what that federal court, and you can read that decision yourself down in the video description there. So Clinton lost that vote in Congress, although I noticed several people on the Sunday morning show saying that there had been, I saw someone say there were 18 requests from presidents for authorization of use of military force, and all 18 had been approved by Congress. And also here's George Stephanopoulos saying basically the same thing in this clip.
There were serious concerns expressed by his national security team, concerns chief among them that Congress could vote no on his request for authorization.
Well, that's the big question, John. He would be the first president in modern times to lose a vote for...
So yeah, you can see George Stephanopoulos there saying that no president has ever lost a vote, which is not true, because you can even see the court case down in the video description there, showing that President Clinton lost a vote in Congress to authorize his use of force in Kosovo. I see I do have a bunch of people. You can all see and hear me. I can see. So hold on for 1 second. I showed you 3 clips, and of course, as usual, when I show 3 clips, I gotta add in the next 3 clips. The next one I'm actually going to show is from Senator Tim Kaine, talking about one of the things that is in that court case that I put the link to is it talks about the War Powers Act, which was something that the Congress passed in the 1970s after Nixon's going into the secret bombing in Cambodia and all these military actions that were unauthorized, and so Congress passed the War Powers Resolution Act that basically says that the president can only, as commander-in-chief, can only use force for 60 days, and he has to report to Congress, and there are all these requirements. And this is kind of what I was saying about the political question, that there's always been this tension between the president's power as commander-in-chief and the Congress's power to declare war and also to fund the military. And so they always fight it out, and no president has ever accepted the constitutionality of the War Powers Act, but they've all pretty much complied with it. I don't know if Libya may be an exception, kind of, but I want to show you this clip from Senator Tim Kaine saying that maybe the War Powers Act needs to be revised because Congress has really not taken responsibility for military action in a lot of cases. And anyway, here it is.
Challenge. I have been maintaining we need to update the War Powers Act of 1973 because we've gotten sloppy in this. The presidents often overreach, and Congress often wants to evade responsibility, evade votes, rather than accept the consequences. I think this could be a very historic and important debate. And again, if we can reach a consensus, we will be much stronger as a nation, and the likelihood of success of our actions will be, I think, great.
So I thought that was interesting about maybe this whole what's been going on with Syria may cause Congress to reevaluate the War Powers Act, though I don't think that's really the correct way for Congress to. I think Congress should do it on a case-by-case basis, and that whole. I mean, I'm not sure whether the War Powers Act is constitutional anyway, but and there are actually arguments that it's unconstitutional from the executive branch side, that it takes away too much power from the executive, and then there are also arguments that it gives up too much of Congress's power. It gives the president too much latitude to act for too long without the authorization. But anyway, Congress is going to debate all this, and there are a bunch of members of the Senate and the House on talking about how they were going to vote or what they thought. I mean, I think if anyone's interested in my position, I think my position is closest to Representative Adam Smith when he was asked if this vote were held today, how would you vote? And I'll show you that clip here.
I don't have to vote today, so we're going to have the debate in the next week or so, and I'm going to give the president the chance to make his case. I think the arguments are compelling. It's just very, very difficult. There are a lot of awful humanitarian crises throughout the world. It's hard to say when the U.S. is in a position to step in and fix it.
Okay, so I'm going to count you skeptical.
So yeah, that's I guess count me as skeptical, but I'm not one of the. There are a lot of people on the left who are reflexively against the military action, and I actually want to watch the debate and decide, because I do have some belief in the international norm not to use weapons of mass destruction. I'll get to that a little more later in the show. There's some hypocrisy in the U.S. stand on that right now, but which I'll get to later in the show. But personally, I have an undergraduate degree in history, and to get that undergraduate degree in history, I had to write a senior essay, which was on the attempt at international control of atomic weapons at the end of World War II, based on the collected papers of Henry Stimson, Dean Acheson, and Bernard Baruch. And so I studied in great detail the attempt at the end of World War II. They actually tried to put this all in the hands of the United Nations so that all nuclear weapons would actually, and nuclear research would be in the hands of the United Nations. That's where the United Nations Atomic Energy Commission comes from too, is from those original. Anyway, I discussed this in more detail in one of the videos I've made. I think it's called "No More Nukes," and I have a link there to my in that video to my senior essay if anyone's really interested in reading it. But so I actually think that there is some reason to try to uphold that international norm. Now, I want to see more about the evidence and more about the strategy, and that's one of the reasons I'm glad that President Obama has asked for congressional authorization, because I'm hoping in the course of the debate that we'll learn more that will help me personally make my decision. And I want to show a clip of Senator Tim Kaine talking about the usefulness of that debate to educate people here.
Do you believe there is a coherent strategy before the American public? And if not, do you believe the president is obligated to go before the American public in something akin to an Oval Office address to explain not only the history, but the motives and the likely outcome of engagement in Syria?
Major, that's exactly why the president's decision to come before Congress is so powerful, and I'm so happy that he's done it. Because how does the American public get educated? The best way to educate the American public about a matter like this is to have that full debate in Congress that the framers of the Constitution intended. They intended that before or when a nation initiates military action, it should be with the approval of Congress. That's in the Constitution, but it reflects a very important judgment as well, and that is this. We should not be sending servicemen and women into military conflict if they don't have complete confidence that the nation's political leadership is behind them. And so what this debate in Congress will do is it will educate the American public about the important principles at stake against use of chemical weapons, and it will help them understand and help Congress come to a consensus about what needs to be done. I agree with Secretary Kerry. We are strong when we act together, but when we're divided. If the president were to do something without congressional support, it's just not fair to the men and women we ask to fight our battles to send them in not knowing whether the American public or Congress backs them up.
Senator.
So I do agree with that I'm looking forward to the congressional debate to see some of this evidence laid out and to see the arguments laid out as to how this bombing is actually going to help anything. And I mean, in the abstract, like I was saying, I can understand and possibly support this international norm that weapons of mass destruction can't be used and there has to be some consequence. But as to whether this particular action is a effective way to take care of that or to protect that international norm, that I'm less and I remain skeptical. That's what I said. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of that debate. Now I pretty much, I think, run out of people. I'm going to show some clips of John Kerry. Secretary of State John Kerry was on all the Sunday morning shows this morning. Fox News Sunday. But by the way, the 5 shows that I'm taking clips from are NBC's Meet the Press, ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, CBS's Face the Nation, Fox News Sunday, and CNN's State of the Union. And Secretary of State John Kerry appeared on all 5 of those shows this morning, and he said some positive things, obviously, about the Obama administration's policy. But other than that, I think I have run out of other people saying positive things about what Barack Obama has done here. And I wanted to show you even some people on the left who normally are supporters of Barack Obama, and I would count freed Zakaria, who does the other CNN program I sometimes take clips from, freed Zakaria's GPS. I'd count him as one of the supporters of Barack Obama, but he was not going to say anything nice about what President Obama decided to do here and going for the authorization from Congress. Anyway, I'll show you what he said on CNN's State of the Union here.
The Secretary is saying that even if Congress votes no, the president would use some type of military force against Assad. Do you think that's a wise decision?
I think the decision-making has been so confused and muddled that it is difficult to put the word wise in front of anything they're doing right now. The administration has hesitated between non-intervention and intervention, and it is caught between those stools. For a long time, President Obama had explained in a very disciplined way that this was a messy internal civil war and the United States couldn't do much to affect it. But now all of a sudden this has huge implications for American interests spanning North Korea, Iran, the entire credibility of the United States. So then why are we talking about 2 days of strikes? And you see the same tension, the same confusion in this whole issue of Congress. As you say, if this is as massive and important a violation of international law, standards, decency, compelling American action, then, as you were pointing out, the United States should have acted and acted quickly. The president seemed to have made that determination. And then all of a sudden, he wanted it both ways on this one as well. So I think that you have these two confusions between intervention on the one hand and non-intervention and trying to have it both ways. And on the presidential authority and congressional approval. And in both cases, the administration seems to want to have it both ways, but it can't.
Christian, both ways? They want to have it?
I don't know. Did they just call President Obama bisexual there? No. But I guess they are trying to say that he's trying to have it both ways, intervention, non-intervention, having the authority, but also looking for congressional authority. And but I think that it's not a simplistic policy. Basically, I think the policy of the Obama administration here is that they are for regime change in Syria, but they don't think military force will accomplish regime change. The use of military force is a way to exact a punishment for the use of chemical weapons, and that's going to be something that actually hurts Bashar Assad of Syria. And I said I was going to show some clips of John Kerry defending the Obama administration policy, and here's where he talks about what the strike is not going to do and what it is going to do. Anyway, here it is.
David, the President of the United States has said that Assad must go, and that is the policy of the United States. But we do not believe that this military action the President has decided to take should be more than an effort to try to deter and prevent the use of chemical weapons and to degrade his capacity to use those weapons. So the military operation is not calculated to become involved in the effort to topple him, but the political operation and the support for the opposition is. And the President of the United States, as you know, has declared that we will provide additional support to the opposition. We do not believe there is any scenario under which Assad could continue with any kind of authority whatsoever to govern in Syria. And so, yes, the policy is politically, through the Geneva process, through our commitment to the ultimate negotiated settlement that will have to take place, there is no future for Assad in that governance. But this military operation is specifically geared to prevent a future chemical attack and to deter and to degrade the Assad capacity to be able to do that. Now, let me be clear. Whatever the president ultimately decides to do in that context, I assure you, Assad will feel its impact, and they will know that something has happened.
So I guess that's an important thing to look for in a military action. When it's done, the person who's been attacked should know that it has happened. So But this is kind of a complicated policy where the military action is to uphold this international principle against the use of weapons of mass destruction, while there is also this policy of regime change that's going to be affected through diplomatic and political efforts. And so it's, in some way, that's one of the reasons that I want to learn more about it through the debate, and I'm not reflexively against it. Now, some people are reflexively against it because they see this authorization for the use of military force as analogous to what happened in Iraq, and that was that sort of analogy showed up on a lot of the shows. I think there are some significant differences, but first I want to show you here on This Week with George Stephanopoulos. They put they juxtaposed two clips. One from the Iraq and one from before the Iraq War, and one from now, and I want to show you that here.
These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
Our intelligence community has carefully reviewed and re-reviewed information regarding this attack. And I will tell you, it has done so more than mindful of the Iraq experience. We will not repeat that moment.
So yeah, there was definitely a lot of talk about the comparison to Iraq, and it wasn't just the playing of those clips. Let me just add in the next three clips here real quick. There was also this interesting little back and forth between Robert Gibbs from the Obama administration and Bill Kristol, who used to work for Vice President Dick Cheney, and they were talking about this whole Iraq War comparison, and I'll show you that here.
In terms of U.S. action. Let's understand the fundamental difference from Iraq, right? We know that there are chemical weapons and they have been used. We're still looking for the chemical weapons in Iraq.
Saddam used chemical weapons against his own citizens, actually.
But understand
and the world did nothing.
The world did nothing, and we should have done something then, and we did something a little later.
For months, we looked for the rationale for Iraq. We continued to look for that rationale for Iraq after we started a war with Iraq, and still haven't come up with the chemical weapons rationale. So doing this in a deliberate way, again, this is why the president was elected to be president, because we're going to do this in a different way.
It's easy to.
So yeah, that's sort of the back and forth on Iraq. Now, what Bill Kristol said there about how Saddam Hussein used these weapons of mass destruction, or the chemical weapons, and we didn't do something about it right away, but eventually we did. Well, I put another link down in the video description down there that there was, coincidentally, there was this article in Foreign Policy magazine this last week about these files that have come to light showing that the United States actually helped Saddam Hussein in his targeting. This is not the later use of chemical weapons on his own people, but his use of chemical weapons in the Iran-Iraq war. The U.S. was actually complicit, helped him find places to target his chemical weapons, and that's kind of the hypocrisy I was saying I was going to get to, that the Obama administration saying now that the United States has to stand up and stop the use of chemical weapons, when back in the Reagan-Bush years, the first Bush, because that's right around when this was happening, was the end of the Reagan administration, beginning of the first Bush administration. The United States was totally complicit in Saddam Hussein's use of chemical weapons. So, I guess I shouldn't be expecting Obama to play to the lowest common denominator of American foreign policy, but anyway, I wanted to point that out. And the whole Iraq comparison also came up in sort of a smart-ass question that David Gregory asked John Kerry, and this is another one of the John Kerry clips, using the whole the slam dunk phrase from the Iraq War. Anyway, I'll show you that clip here.
I just want to underline the news you've made this morning. This is a sarin gas attack perpetrated by the Assad regime. This is a slam dunk case that he did it.
We don't. The word slam dunk should be retired from the American national security issues. We are saying that the high confidence that the intelligence community has expressed, and the case that I laid out the other day is growing stronger by the day. We know where this attack came from. We know exactly where it went. We know what happened exactly afterwards. We know the preparations were being taken before for this attack. We know that people were told to use their gas masks to prepare for the use of a chemical barrage. We also know that after it took place, they acknowledged that they had done it and were worried about the consequences and whether the UN inspectors were going to find out. I think this is a very powerful case.
So yeah, the whole slam dunk thing. It looks like John Kerry is not going to be, or anyone from the Obama administration is not going to be using the phrase slam dunk. But you can see John Kerry there putting out what the Obama administration is apparently going to be trying to prove to Congress over the next week or so, that all these supposed intelligence sources they have that show that it was the Bashar al-Assad and his regime that used chemical weapons, and they supposedly have intelligence showing where they were fired from, where they landed, that they have intercepted communications, but that has to be examined, and that's one of the good things about going to Congress is that there's going to be some back and forth and some skepticism, and people will take a look at this, and maybe we'll know more about it a week from now than we know now. So by the way, the one piece of breaking news, I think the Obama administration is going to be laying out more and more evidence every day. That's one of the things about being president of the United States, is you get to kind of set the agenda and sometimes even set the news cycle by breaking news. And so John Kerry had his breaking news, and he broke this on all the Sunday morning shows. But I just have I think I used the example from Meet the Press, where this is his breaking news on new evidence in the Syrian use of chemical weapons in this clip.
Let me just add this morning a very important recent development that in the last 24 hours we have learned through samples that were provided to the United States and that have now been tested from first responders in East Damascus, and hair samples and blood samples have tested positive for signatures of sarin. So this case is building, and this case will build.
So yeah, there's the breaking news from John Kerry that they've taken hair and blood samples. This is the first responders who've been treating the victims of this chemical attack, and that they found the signatures of sarin, and I'm sure there's going to be more and more evidence from the Obama administration that's going to be brought out to try to get Congress to authorize this. Now I got to add in the next 3 clips here. Now the other I have a couple more, or maybe it's actually 3 more John Kerry clips here. Yeah, I have 3 more clips of John Kerry I want to show you. In the first one, there's been actually a lot of reporting, and I saw this on several of the shows, where there was dissension in the Obama administration, and that John Kerry and others opposed President Obama going to get congressional authorization. And so I want to show you a clip of John Kerry denying that. This was also on Meet the Press, I think, here.
I think I'm still trying to understand the abrupt shift. I know that you and others on the national security team, based on my own reporting, were opposed to the president seeking congressional authority, thinking that he didn't need it. The reaction from the Syrian state media is that this is the beginning, they say, of an historic American retreat. Do you feel undermined? Do you think the United States has undermined its leverage in the world, its credibility, having ramped up the specter of military action as being imminent, and then saying, well, no, we're going to go to Congress first?
David, I completely disagree with the fundamental premise that you set out. No, I did not oppose going, nor did anybody else that I know of originally. The issue originally was, should the President of the United States take action in order to enforce the credibility and the interests of our country and to deter Assad from using these weapons and to degrade his capacity to do so. That was the issue. And that's the issue that we debated. There was no decision not to do that, and the President has the right to do that, and we discussed the options in the context of his right to take that action. The President then made the decision that he thought we would be stronger and the United States would act with greater moral authority and greater strength if we acted in a united way. He didn't think it was worthwhile acting and having the Syrians and a whole bunch of other folks looking at the United States arguing about whether or not it was legitimate, or should he have done it, or should he have moved faster. He believes we need to move. He's made his decision. Now it's up to the Congress of the United States to join him in affirming the international norm with respect to enforcement against the use of chemical weapons.
So yeah, there's John Kerry denying that there was dissension in the ranks, and of course, he all of his answers are really long-winded. I'd forgotten from his 2004 presidential campaign how long that guy can talk, but I guess it gives me a little break between when I have to talk here. But I also want to show he took a bunch of tough questions, and he not only that slam dunk question. There was also this comparison to his criticism of what Bush did in Iraq with the coalition of the willing, which he called the coalition of the few. And as of right now, the United States, of course, Great Britain, the parliament there voted down involvement in these strikes on Syria. So the Arab League is kind of waffling, and there are very few allies here. So Gloria Borger over on CNN's State of the Union asked John Kerry about that in this clip.
About our coalition. When you were running for president in 2004, you said that in Iraq we should not have relied on what you called a coalition of the few. Isn't that what we have here right now?
Well, I think we have a coalition of more than the few, but this is a situation that is going to grow as the evidence comes out. That's another reason why the president believes there is a value in going through this process. I've talked with a number of nations who have offered to be helpful. No decisions have been made about what shape that will take, but I believe that there are many. The Arab League has already spoken out. Voices as far away as Japan, New Zealand, Australia, other places have spoken out. I think the world takes enormous affront at this incredible abuse of power, this attack on decency and incredible crime against humanity. I think voices will grow over the next days as people see the evidence. And that evidence is becoming more powerful every day. As I mentioned to you, we now have the additional evidence of the signatures of sarin gas from the first responders in Damascus.
Is this from the United Nations? Is this from the United Nations?
No, this is independent. This came to the United States. It's independent.
So yeah, there's another John Kerry defense of how this is different from the Iraq War and of his own attacks on the Bush administration. I just want to show you one more clip from John Kerry where he's talking about, again, sort of the subtle policy here about what the president's going to do, and also what the military action is not supposed to do. And I'll show you that clip here.
See, the president is talking about a military action geared to deter the use of chemical weapons and geared to diminish Assad's capacity, to degrade his capacity to be able to carry out those strikes. The president is not talking about taking over this civil war. The president is not talking about boots on the ground, but the president is talking about doing something that upholds this international norm and I think makes it clear to Assad that much worse could happen if he were to continue to use these weapons. The alternative for the Congress and for the world is that you grant Assad and people like him complete impunity and you totally tear down the entire international process of accountability that has been built up over all these years.
So yeah, that's basically the administration case on why we should go ahead with this. And of course, there was a little bit more. One of the things President Obama said in his announcement yesterday was that he had gotten assurances from, and let me add in these next clips here real quick. He'd gotten assurances from his the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Martin Dempsey, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, that this was not a time-sensitive attack, that it would be okay today or 3 days from now or a month from now, it would still be effective. And they were beyond whether this is the right thing to do. I guess one of the considerations is whether it's actually would be effective to strike. And I wanted to show you a few clips on that topic, starting with Martha Raddatz, who is a great reporter who has a lot of good military connections. So she's sort of confirming what President Obama said about Martin Dempsey and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in this clip.
One person the president didn't consult early was General Dempsey, and he gave the president the cover he needed.
He really gave him cover, and in fact, it's real. Martin Dempsey said it would be just as effective if you did it today, tomorrow, or a month from now. And think of it this way, George. It's kind of like a feint. The enemy, we watch the Syrian regime and how they responded to the idea of attack, where they started moving things. So in many ways, it may be more effective a month from now because we can train more, we can watch what the Syrian regime does and respond to that. But boy, they were ready. They had those destroyers in the Mediterranean ready to go.
And this is
So, yeah, I think that there is some truth to. I mean, I don't know about the fact that delaying is going to make it more effective, but I think that there are a lot of effective targets. One thing about the difference between Syria and Iraq is you have to remember, at least when the second George W. Bush was contemplating going into Iraq, we already had all these no-fly zones. We were already doing all this like air power attacks on Iraq, all the way from the first President Bush through Clinton to the second President Bush. In fact, Clinton did some strikes on around the time of Monica Lewinsky scandal on that. It turns out later, after the Iraq War, we found out he pretty much destroyed the remnants of Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction program through airstrikes on Iraq during the Clinton administration, in between the two Iraq wars. So. One difference I would point out is Syria has never been. I mean, there have been some Israeli strikes on Syria, but it's sort of like virgin strike territory. They have really good air defenses that could be taken out, and they have an air force and all these runways, and different from Iraq and also Afghanistan. Afghanistan is pretty much had been pretty much a destroyed country, and had all these years of war before the U.S. went in there in 2001. That is also unlike Syria, where air power can actually do a lot of damage because there's so much stuff that's never been bombed, I guess is the point I was trying to make. And there was a retired, and that is also, some people have misunderstood when I say things like that I'm just talking about whether there is a military effectiveness. I'm not saying that I necessarily support that one. But I want to show this retired general, what was his name? James Cartwright was also talking sort of about this air defense thing and how the U.S. could be effective with airstrikes in this clip.
And he's vulnerable in several areas. I mean, in the Middle East, people don't worry about the Syrian army. The strength of the Syrians is their defenses, their air defenses, and that's where they're vulnerable. Those are generally fixed, they're very expensive, they can't be repaired easily, so they become a very interesting target in managing this idea of retribution.
Now, there was also sort of a contrary point of view. I wanted to play a clip from David Gergen, who was an advisor to presidents of both parties over several years. who made an important point about how delays could work to make the attacks less effective in this clip.
Nick was pointing out some of the risks. There is a very definite risk that Russia now will step up its armaments of the Syrians in preparation for an attack. After all, this is their friend. They're going to say this is a wrongful action with no international support, illegal internationally, and we're going to step it up. So there are those risks, I think. I think the bigger risk, and what the president's got to work on here, is that you can say it's wise to have called for the Congress to do this, but the way he went about it, it was so jerky and unpredictable that I think it's raised questions about just how firm a grip he has on the wheel as a commander-in-chief. I mean, after all, starting with the drawing of the red line itself, which seemed to be sort of almost by the way, it's a red line as opposed to a well-thought-out plan, and now we have no apparent strategy for the long term in the Middle East. Nick knows this better than I do, but if presidents need to be seen in control of events and sort of guiding events, and not sort of just reacting or bouncing around.
Yeah, so I played that clip to about the point that he made at the beginning there, that maybe Russia will actually give increased armaments to Syria because of what's going on. And you know, President Obama is going to be at this G20 summit in St. Petersburg in the next week or so, and even though he canceled his one-on-one summit with Putin, they are going to probably meet up there. And that was actually David Gergen was answering a question there about what they might say, and he was saying they're probably going to be pretty icy. But I also want to show you David Gergen was pretty critical of the president there, that he might not have a grip on what's going on. And there was a lot of criticism of the president and the Obama administration. I want to show you a few clips from Senator Rand Paul, who, he's running for president, and he's pretty much staked out a position against this military action. I guess given the foreign policy views of his father and his runs for president, I guess it kind of makes sense that it... but he also said some kind of strange things, especially about Christians, that I want to show you. But first, I want to show you, he started with this slam on John Kerry that I thought was not really appropriate. Anyway, I'll show you that clip. This is all from Meet the Press. Senator Rand Paul criticizing the Obama administration and Secretary of State John Kerry here.
No, and I think it's a mistake to get involved in the Syrian civil war. And what I would ask John Kerry is, he's famous for saying, how can you ask a man to be the last one to die for a mistake? I would ask John Kerry, how can you ask a man to be the first one to die for a mistake? I would ask John Kerry, do you think that it's less likely or more likely that chemical weapons will be used again if we bomb Assad? I'll ask him if it's more likely or less likely that we'll have more refugees in Jordan, or that Israel might suffer attack. I think all of the bad things you can imagine are all more likely if we get involved in the Syrian civil war.
It's interesting.
So, yeah, Rand Paul obviously is against the use of force. I thought that was kind of a slam at John Kerry there about being the last one to die for a mistake. But Rand Paul also, he didn't really address the whole issue of whether chemical weapons, the use of chemical weapons should be something that the United States, or opposing the use of chemical weapons is a principle that the United States should enforce through military action. But I'll show you how he answered that question in this clip.
What the president is saying in this drafted resolution that he'd like Congress to authorize, that the United States must draw a line at the use of chemical weapons, any weapons of mass destruction in war, that you simply cannot allow it, and that if we strike Assad and he uses them again, I heard Secretary Kerry say that the United States might strike Assad again if he uses the weapons. Why not draw that line in the sand, as the president wants you to, and say we can't allow WMD to be used?
I think the line in the sand should be that America gets involved when American interests are threatened. I don't see American interests involved on either side of this Syrian war. I see Assad, who has protected Christians for a number of decades, and then I see the Islamic rebels on the other side who have been attacking Christians. I see Al-Qaeda on one side, the side we would go in to support, and I see it to be murky, and I don't see a clear-cut American interest. I don't see either party that is victorious, if either party is victorious, being an American ally.
So yeah, he mentioned the Christians there, and what he didn't really do is answer the question about, he said the use of chemical weapons shouldn't be a line in the sand. U.S. national interest should be a line in the sand. But what he didn't really address is it in the U.S. national interest to prevent the use of weapons of mass destruction? And that whole thing about how Assad is a good guy because he protects Christians, that seemed a little weird, and Rand Paul kind of went into that in a little more detail in a subsequent answer that I'll show you here.
Valid point. If we're going to launch cruise missiles and it's not going to affect the outcome, basically what they're pushing for, and my interpretation of the current Obama administration's policy, is they want to fight for stalemate, then they want a negotiated settlement. They think that Assad has the upper hand now. They want to balance it out. But what I've told them is I'm not sending my son, your son, or anybody else's son to fight for stalemate. When we fight when we have to, but I see things in a very personal basis. I see a young John Kerry who went to war, and I wish he remembered more of how awful war is and that it shouldn't be a desired outcome. Neither are chemical weapons, and they should absolutely be condemned. But I think the failure of the Obama administration has been we haven't engaged the Russians enough or the Chinese enough on this, and I think they were engaged. I think there's a possibility Assad could already be gone. The Russians have every reason to want to keep their influence in Syria, and I think the only way they do is if there's a change in government where Assad is gone but some of the same people remain stable. That would also be good for the Christians. I think the Islamic rebels winning is a bad idea for the Christians, and all of a sudden we'll have another Islamic state where Christians are persecuted. And so I think really the best outcome for all the major powers would be a peaceful transition in government, and Russia could influence that if they told Assad no more weapons.
Now I'm very skeptical of that point of view as well, where we could find some other Alawite or someone who, from the Bashir Assad regime, other than Assad himself, who could take over with the blessing of the Russians and protect all the Christians and fight off the bad Muslims for us. That seems more like a policy that's geared for the Republican primaries than actually to be effective. Or that's my analysis there. Now, they were also talking about the authorization for use of military force, and I also put a link to that down in the video description if anyone wants to read the that authorization for themselves. But there's a couple clauses here I want to show you here. I think it's actually very broadly written, maybe too broadly written. You can see it says the President's authorized to use armed forces of the U.S. as he determines to be necessary and appropriate in connection with. That part right there, as he determines to be necessary and appropriate in connection with, that is really broad. In connection with the use of chemical weapons or other weapons of mass destruction in the conflict in Syria in order to prevent or deter the use of or proliferation, including transfer to terrorist groups. Anyway, you can see it all there. I think it gives the president authority to do almost anything in Syria, and I think that'll be kind of interesting to see how the Congress puts limits on that. I think that the authorization, like I said before, I'm kind of predicting that the Congress is going to pass an authorization for use of military force, but I think it's not going to be as broad as what I just showed you there. I notice the next clip I want to show you, I gotta add in the next 3 clips here. Major Garret, who used to work at Fox News, was over on. He now works for CBS. He was on Face the Nation, but the question he asked seems like he forgot he wasn't working for Fox News anymore, and it talked about the authorization for use of military force, and he talked about John Kerry calling Bashar Assad Hitler and Hussein. He actually said that Hitler and Hussein were the only ones who'd used chemical weapons since the 1920s when they'd been banned. But so this is kind of an over-the-top biased question, and then I'll show you John McCain's answer in this
You
question.
said this authorization should say more and be more specific about ousting Assad from power. What this authorization actually says is that through a negotiated political settlement, this will be resolved. The United States, through Secretary of State Kerry this morning, called him Hitler and Hussein and a murderous thug. Based on your experience with history, do those types of people negotiate their own absence from power? And is that a credible approach to this matter?
Only when Bashar Assad believes that he is losing. Right now, thanks to 5,000 Hezbollah, thanks to Iran, thanks to Russia, these arms shipments that are pouring in, and we haven't given the Free Syrian Army a single weapon. I mean, this is shameful. It's shameful. While 1 million children are now refugees.
So to be precise,
Oh, sorry about that. I had my sound off there. There's a break in the sound. Anyway, I apologize for the loss of sound there, but what I was saying there was that I thought it was amusing that Major Garret loaded up the question there with this whole false premise about how John Kerry had referred to Bashar Assad as Hitler and Hussein, when really he just said that they were ones who had used chemical weapons. But then, of course, John McCain came on, and he was one of the many people critical of the Obama administration. But I also wanted to show you, if you really want to see the criticism of the Obama administration, you have to go to Fox News itself, which, of course, as you might expect, was completely critical of Obama's decisions, like no matter what he does. And I want to show you this, just the intro clip where they talk about how Obama has done an about face, he's abdicated leadership, and he's put the whole thing on hold just because he didn't attack Syria right away. Anyway, I'll show you the intro clip from Fox News Sunday here.
I'm Chris Wallace. President Obama does an about face and asks Congress to authorize military force in Syria.
Our capacity to execute this mission is not time sensitive. It will be effective tomorrow, or next week, or 1 month from now.
After days of making the case the Assad regime killed more than 1,000 of its own people with chemical weapons, the president says the deaths should not go unpunished. But
while I believe I have the authority to carry out this military action without specific congressional authorization, I know that the country will be stronger if we take this course, and our actions will be even more effective.
We have a president who does what he says that he will do.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry joins us to discuss the president's decision to delay action in Syria more than a week. Then we'll talk with two leaders of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Democrat Jack Reed and Republican James Inhofe, and New York Congressman Peter King. who says the president is abdicating his responsibility as commander-in-chief. Plus, retired four-star General Jack Kaine and former Senator Joe Lieberman join our Sunday panel with their take on President Obama's decision to put Syria on hold.
So yeah, that was pretty much all the litany of where Fox News was going to go. But if you don't think that intro was biased here, you have to agree that this little look at Obama's speech asking for authorization from Congress. This is from Fox News White House correspondent Ed Henry. I don't think this is anyone can disagree about the negative attack on Obama, the way this was put together.
The president declaring this menace needs to be confronted, though apparently not confronted right away. Within minutes of leaving the Rose Garden, the president and vice president went out for a golf match. Chris?
Ed Henry reporting for the White House. Ed, thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks for pointing out that after Obama gave a speech, he went golfing. I'm not sure exactly why that's relevant, but I guess it's something that they like to do on Fox News. But that, of course, was not the only attack on Obama. From basically the entire Fox News broadcast had very similar attacks on President Obama's policy, and whether you agree with it or not, it seemed to me that it was a little bit over the top. Not just that golfing thing. Here is Fox News Mideast correspondent from Jerusalem talking about basically how everyone in the Middle East now hates Obama, and I'll show you that clip here.
Chris, leaders in capitals around the region are scratching their heads asking two things. What happened and what does it mean now? Up until yesterday, when an American president set a red line or drew a line in the sand, it meant something. Now folks aren't so sure. Government officials here in Israel will use the words like coward off the record. The Syrians, meanwhile, are declaring victory. On state TV today, President Assad has said, quote, Syria will not change its principles. Syria's deputy prime minister yesterday, speaking on Pan-Arab television, said that America had lost the battle before it started. The administration had made a joke out of itself. That was while Syrian state TV was showing street parties in celebration. The Syrians had spent the week moving their military hardware around, trying to keep it away from U.S. targeting so they could make good on their promise to attack Tel Aviv if the U.S. struck. In response to that, Israel forward deployed its Iron Dome missile defense system, called up reserve soldiers, canceled military leave, those kinds of things. The Israelis say they are going to remain on high alert through this next period to see what the Americans do. But there's probably a bigger story here from the Israeli perspective and from the whole Middle East perspective. What the U.S. did about Syria was seen as a test for what President Obama might do about Iran, something that he has drawn a very similar red line about when it comes to the Iranian nuclear program. Now there is a fear in Israel that if push comes to shove with Iran, the Israelis may have to go it alone. Strength, of course, in the Middle East is not really measured by what you say, but is measured by what you do, Chris. And especially now, it has looked as though the Syrians, for that matter, even the Russians, were eye to eye with President Obama, and President Obama has blinked in order for him to regain his credibility in this region, for, of course, the red lines of the President of the United States to mean something. It's seen as that will be judged over the next couple of weeks, Chris, by what President Obama actually does, not what he or members of his administration say.
So, yeah, there's pretty much the Fox News attack on Obama, talking about how everyone in the Middle East hates him. And I notice everyone on Fox News, even though there's a split in the Republican Party as to whether there should be force, everyone seemed to be in favor of the use of force on Fox News, including Peter King, Representative Peter King, who is one of the Obama administration's severest critics on Middle East policy. And they talked about how, in the intro there, how he said that just going to Congress was abdicating his responsibility as commander-in-chief, which seems kind of extreme to me. And I want to show you how Republican Representative Peter King followed up on that criticism on Fox News Sunday here.
Congressman King, you have called this an abdication of the president's responsibility as commander-in-chief.
from my civics books, I thought I remembered the president is supposed to go to Congress before he takes military action.
No, he's not. The president, as commander-in-chief, has absolute constitutional and statutory power to take military action. President Eisenhower, President Reagan, President Clinton all took it. Even under the War Powers Act, he's authorized to do it. And if he says this issue is as important as it is, and sending so many mixed signals over the last, really over the last year, and certainly over the last 10 days, this is a clear failure of leadership. And if he feels so strongly about it, and if he doesn't want to take the action himself, then he should call us back into session tomorrow. I mean, we can't be waiting 9-10 days and allowing Syria to prepare for this and sending such a mixed signal to the world, and particularly to Iran. If we can't stop Syria on a red line with chemical weapons, how can anyone expect us to stop Iran with the red line on nuclear weapons?
So yeah, that was from the right wing of the Republican Party, the non-isolationist wing. That was the kind of criticism President Obama was getting, that going to Congress, he wasn't acting fast enough, that he's sending signs of weakness to Iran. And then the most nasty attack I think I saw in the Obama administration came from Senator James Inhofe, who said that Obama had destroyed the military and it would be immoral to use for it. I want to show you that clip from Fox News Sunday here.
You've got to realize what this president has done to our military, and our military is so degraded now. It's not just me who says this. I want to read one quote by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey. He said, "Our military force is so degraded and unready, it would be immoral to use force." That's exactly what they're talking about doing, is using force.
Now you notice how Fox News Sunday had a picture of Martin Dempsey up there ready to go. So they did a little research there about what James Inhofe said, but he was totally misquoting what General Dempsey said. I have also put a link down in the video description to an article where it actually has what General Dempsey said. He said, but I will tell you personally, if ever the force, this is about the sequestration cuts to the military that actually Congress and the administration did together, but if ever the force is so degraded and so unready and then we are asked to use it, it would be immoral to use the force unless it's well-trained, well-led, and well-equipped. And then Senator Lindsey Graham asked, are we on the path to creating that dilemma? And he said, we are on that path. But of course he never said that that has happened already, so that was like totally misquote, disingenuous from James Inhofe, and that was just sort of the icing on the cake on the Fox News Sunday Hate Obama Fest that was on this morning. I have like one more clip I want to show you. They had a panel, and everyone on the panel kind of like attacked what Obama had done. And someone called it lunacy. And I'll show you the only person who like even came close to supporting what President Obama had did was Washington Post Charles Lane, and Chris Wallace even kind of had to admit this when he was asking him a question about it, and I'll show you that. This is the last clip of the night here.
Chuck, if there's anybody in this panel who at least sees the president's side of the case, it's you. Do you see the president's side and the actions, the run-up to war, and then hitting the pause button?
Look, no one's going to dispute this has been mismanaged in many different ways. I would hope some people would acknowledge the inherent difficulty of the problem that he faces. And I think it's a bit too much to dismiss going to Congress as lunacy, since after all, that is kind of what the Constitution calls for, and it's been what a lot of Republicans, frankly, have been calling for. Where I think the president has got himself a problem here is that he does seem to think this is somehow turning the tables on his opponents in Congress by sort of giving them what they wished for and letting them work it out. I'm not sure that's the way this plays out. I think they now have him over a barrel because he's basically gone to a Congress, one house of which is dominated by Republicans, and asked them for a political bailout. Be very interested to see what kind of conditions, quietly or openly, they start demanding before they give him what he says he wants.
All right.
Now, I'm not sure if that is a accurate analysis or not. I don't know if Congress can actually get concessions from President Obama to give him the authorization he wants. David Axelrod, former senior advisor to the Obama administration, he tweeted something about that, how Congress is now the dog that's caught the car, and what are they going to do now that they have the responsibility to approve or not approve the action. And I think that's a little closer to the truth, but I mean, I think the real truth is that it should be an educational exercise to find out more about the evidence and more about the strategy and see if it's really worthwhile doing this. So that was my last clip. I want to go through and try to answer a few of the questions here. I'm sorry, I see a bunch of people commenting on my loss of audio earlier, and I apologize for that. It was just after one clip there, I turned it on and off to try to do stuff. So I don't know what you all think about the action in Syria. I don't know if you're like waiting to make up your minds too, but let me see if I can find a couple just sort of random comments here from the discussion that you're having. It looks like you're talking to each other here too, but let's see. No Good Name says, could we go back to being okay with chemical weapons? Were we then? I don't know exactly what. I guess we were when Iraq was using them against Iran, but like I said, I don't think the fact that the Reagan and Bush administrations were complicit in the use of chemical weapons means that we should give up on the idea of stopping their use. So, Zed Alpha says, John Forbes, Skull and Bones, Kerry looks like some kind of orange-colored shambling mound. Pumpkin-faced lying mug of his. Kerry was anti-war at one time. Threw his medals over the White House fence. Well, first, the whole Skull and Bones things that I actually have my undergraduate history degree from Yale University, though I was not a member of Skull and Bones, and I don't think being a member of Skull and Bones should be disqualifying, but I don't believe in all those conspiracy theories. But I did notice he looked a little like he'd had a lot of Botox, but I don't know. But yeah, he was anti-war, and I thought it was weird that Rand Paul was using his anti-war or his war experience against him, saying, because Rand Paul has no war experience, and saying, John Kerry should know better about war and remember his war experience better. I thought that was odd, but let me see. Let me get one more. That is not an on-topic question. But for all you people who want to ask me off-topic questions, as I'm ending here, I've been doing LiberalViewer Wednesday. I'm only doing it the first Wednesday of the month, but it's Happy September, everyone. It's a new month, and I will be doing LiberalViewer Wednesday this Wednesday. I'm having a few computer problems, so I may be using my old iMac instead of this MacBook, which has been doing some overheating. That's why it's a little bit wobbly tonight. Anyway, so if you have any off-topic questions or questions, I'm going to be posting the link to my LiberalViewer Wednesday Live coming up on this Wednesday. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the clips I cut out for you, and it helped educate you a little bit about what's going on, because I was educated by watching the shows this morning, but I'm looking forward to an interesting debate about what's going to happen in the Syrian, whether the U.S. is going to use force. So anyway, I hope you all find what I showed you interesting and informative, and join me coming up this week, Wednesday, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. I'll be taking any question you want to ask me for at least half an hour. And anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend. See you around the internet.